Reduction Summit, Partnerships for Safer Communities. Alrighty. Well, as you can see, we're waiting for a special guest to arrive. So I hope that you all are enjoying your time in Indianapolis. We really appreciate everyone coming together this morning for the next 2.5 days for the Violent Crime Reduction Summit. We put together an array of presentations and plenary sessions that really go with the theme of this summit, which is bringing people together for partnership, bringing law enforcement folks together, community members together under one roof, so that we can all, learn about the challenges and the struggles and the strategies that are out there that will best help us address violent crime. One second. We have a special guest that's going to be arriving in 1 second. So between weather delays and all the awkward things that can happen, I'm glad that you all made it here safely. I know lots of folks had some weather delays in the arrival. Thank you. So again, I'm Christy Brackens. I'm the director of the National Public Safety Partnership Program and a senior policy advisor with the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And as I said in the beginning, this is BJA's Violent Crime Reduction Summit, and we are so excited to have you all here today. This is our largest violent crime summit to date. We have over 1,005 attendees. We have cities here represented as far as Anchorage, Alaska, to Raleigh, North Carolina, Richmond, Virginia, Fargo, North Dakota. So the whole spectrum is here. We appreciate, again, like I said earlier, you all taking the time to travel here to be with us here today. So at this time, I invite you to please rise for the presentation of colors by the Indianapolis Police Department Color Guard and the singing of the national anthem by Butler, Indiana Police Department Officer Lisa Weinhammer.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled
You may retire the colors. You may be seated. Thank you, Indianapolis Metro Police Department Color Guard and Butler Officer Weinheimer. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Justice Programs, Amy Solomon. Amy was appointed by President Biden to oversee about $5 billion in grants and resources annually to state, local, and tribal criminal justice and victim service agencies nationwide. She also leads our effort to empower communities and to develop and implement the best strategies for each location to make our neighborhoods safer and stronger. Amy.
Thank you, Christy. Good morning, everyone. I am so pleased to be here to help welcome everyone to the National Violent Crime Reduction Summit. We have a great 2 days ahead. You will be hearing from experts and practitioners from some of the most innovative work that's being done around this country to tackle violent crime. I want to thank Mayor Hogsett and Chief Taylor and U.S. Attorney Myers for welcoming us here, for their leadership, and for helping us kick off the summit today. And a big shout out to BJA Director Carlton Moore and the outstanding team at BJA who has put together this program, which is bringing together federal, state, local, tribal, and community partners from just about every corner of this country. Now, on a personal note, it feels fitting to hold the summit here in Indianapolis. My first visit was in 1999. I was a very young staffer at the National Institute of Justice, and I traveled here with Attorney General Janet Reno. At the time, we came here to visit with the then U.S. Attorney, Judith Stewart, and an incredible group of local partners who had formed the Indianapolis Violence Reduction Partnership. Indianapolis was one of 5 sites that was piloting the Strategic Approaches to Community Safety Initiative, which later evolved into Project Safe Neighborhoods. Indianapolis was focused on reducing gun violence and was remarkably successful. Evaluation findings documented a more than 50% drop in the target neighborhoods compared to a 19% decline nationwide. Dr. Ed McGarrell, who is somewhere in this big room today, he led the research effort, and he has been advising PSN sites ever since. So here we are today, 2 decades later, bringing together leaders from around the country as we take stock of the many lessons learned and chart a way forward in our efforts to reduce violent crime and strengthen communities. We're thrilled to be hosting this conference, and we are especially honored to be joined by the nation's Chief Law Enforcement Officer, Attorney General Merrick Garland. As you all know, Attorney General Garland is a Justice Department veteran, he is a distinguished jurist, and he is a dedicated public servant who cares so deeply about the safety of our communities and the rights of every American. He is steadfast in his support of our law enforcement partners and unwavering in our pursuit of both public safety and equal justice. Please join me in welcoming the 86th Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, everybody from the team of the Office of Justice Programs. Thanks, Carlton, everybody from Bureau of Justice Assistance. I know how hard it is to put something like this together, how much work, and I greatly appreciate everyone's efforts. Thank you, Mayor Hogsett, Chief Taylor, for welcoming us to Indianapolis. We are grateful to both of you for being here today and for hosting us. And Mayor Hogsett, as a former U.S. Attorney, we regard you as one of our own, and we are grateful that you're here. I also want to recognize the state and local law enforcement leaders, city and town leaders, and community partners who have traveled from across the country to be here for the next 3 days. I speak for all of us at the Justice Department when I say that your perspectives and your insights are invaluable to us. We have an enormous amount of respect for the work you do every single day in your communities. And speaking of all of us at the Justice Department, I really mean that. I'm joined today here by Associate Attorney General Vanita Gupta, who many of you know very well. Also here are leaders from each of the department's law enforcement components, the ATF, FBI, DEA, and U.S. Marshals Service, 40 of our United States attorneys and senior leaders from U.S. attorneys' offices across the country, leaders from the Office on Community-Oriented Policing Service, the Office on Violence Against Women, the Office for Access to Justice, and many other Department of Justice components. I'm very pleased to be here with all of them. I'm very pleased that all of them are here, and I am very proud of their efforts. Convenings like this one with our law enforcement and community partners are always important to us at the Justice Department. We know that the best time to build relationships across agencies and jurisdictions is before a crisis or an incident occurs in our communities. But this is an especially critical time in our work together to keep our communities safe. Today, we are confronting a global threat environment that makes it particularly urgent for us to remain vigilant in the face of risks of terrorism and hate-fueled violence. We are closely monitoring the impact that the conflict in the Middle East may have in inspiring foreign terrorist organizations, homegrown violent extremists, and domestic violent extremists, both in the United States and abroad. All of us have seen the extremely sharp increase in the volume and frequency of threats against Jewish, Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian communities across our country since October 7th. The fear that so many of these communities are feeling is palpable. This comes at a time when law enforcement agencies and communities across the country have already been facing significant challenges in the form of violent crime. We are here together today because we know that no one law enforcement agency, no one community, no one town or city can address these challenges on its own. We need each other. We need to work together. We are also here in Indianapolis for the same reason that all of us came to public service in the first place. We believe that everyone in our country deserves to feel safe and to be safe in our communities. Every person in every neighborhood deserves to feel protected. Every parent deserves to know that their children will be safe when they play outside. Violent crime is not just a threat to people's physical safety. It is a threat to their ability to freely go about their daily lives. Violent crime isolates people and their communities. It deepens the fractures in our public life. And when it is not addressed, it can undermine people's trust in the government and in each other. Combating the threat that violent crime poses to people's safety and to our shared future is what motivates us at the Justice Department every day. Shortly after I was sworn in as Attorney General, we launched our department-wide violent crime reduction strategy aimed at addressing the spike in violent crime that had occurred during the pandemic. Central to that strategy is the importance of our partnerships. That includes partnerships among federal law enforcement agencies assisting in the fight against violent crime, partnership with the local communities harmed by that crime, and partnership with the state, local, tribal, and territorial law enforcement agencies protecting those local communities every day. Another element of that strategy is the recognition that the best anti-violent crime strategies are tailored to the needs of and are developed with individual communities. That's why one of the first things we did was focus on strengthening Project Safe Neighborhoods. We oriented the program around a set of principles that put community partnerships, community trust, violence prevention, and measuring results at the center of our efforts. Since then, each of our U.S. Attorney's offices has worked with its partners in state and local law enforcement to develop and implement data-driven, district-specific anti-violent crime efforts. Our U.S. attorneys have brought together law enforcement, research, and community partners to develop PSN programs designed to focus on the drivers of violent crime in their communities. And I am proud of the work that they have done. To give just a few examples, right here in Indianapolis, less than 2 weeks ago, a PSN case out of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Indiana brought together its partners at the FBI's Indianapolis Field Office and the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department to secure the conviction and sentencing of a repeat violent offender. In the Middle District of Florida, the office's PSN strategy has focused not only on investigation, disruption, and prosecution of violent crime, but also on targeted outreach to members of the community, including students, community leaders, and people incarcerated in state prisons nearing their release dates. This outreach is aimed at preventing violence before it occurs. And in the Northern District of Alabama, the office created a PSN program, the Operation Safe Families Initiative, to combat the domestic violence that is driving a significant part of the violent crime in that district. In Jefferson County, Alabama, domestic abusers annually commit more than 70% of the homicides. The Northern District of Alabama's PSN program brings together in one building federal and local prosecutors, as well as law enforcement, victim service providers, and other partner agencies. This program gives victims of domestic violence a place they can go to meet their needs, not just in terms of pursuing law enforcement options against the perpetrator, but also in regaining a sense of safety and well-being. Like PSN, the National Public Safety Partnership, or PSP, is focused on strengthening partnerships across communities to tackle violent crime. PSP makes DOJ tools and expertise available to local law enforcement agencies as they work to address the unique challenges of their communities. Sites participating in this program are able to consult with and receive training, technical assistance, and an array of department resources to combat violent crime. Today, I want to welcome the newest sites participating in PSP this year, all of which are represented here today: Knoxville, Tennessee, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Raleigh, North Carolina, San Antonio, Texas, and Vallejo, California. You join more than 50 communities that have worked with DOJ personnel, outside experts, and each other to better understand and tackle the violent crime challenges specific to their communities. We look forward to working together with you. In addition to PSN and PSP, the Justice Department is putting to use every resource at our disposal in the fight against violent crime. This includes our prosecutors, who are going after recidivists and gangs that are responsible for the greatest violence. This includes our law enforcement components, each of which is working with its state and local law enforcement partners to seize illegal guns and deadly drugs. And this includes our grant-making components, which are working closely with communities across the country to provide targeted support and assistance. We are funding evidence-based, community-centered initiatives aimed at preventing and disrupting violence. We are funding community policing efforts that build the public trust between law enforcement and the community that we know is essential to public safety. And we are making critical investments in hiring more law enforcement officers in communities nationwide to address the crisis in recruitment and retention and to support much-needed resources for law enforcement officer health and wellness. As we work with our partners nationwide to implement community-tailored approaches to combating violent crime, we also recognize that there are universal challenges that require a comprehensive approach. That includes the epidemic of gun violence. And that is why ATF is working with its state and local partners to trace more firearms than ever before in its history. That is why we are operating crime gun intelligence centers in every ATF field office, field division, to coordinate comprehensive tracing and ballistics analysis. These centers, which are represented here today, allow state and local law enforcement agencies to harness the power of ATF's ballistic database and firearms tracing technologies. This information helps lead them to repeat shooters who fuel violent crime. In addition, all 94 of our U.S. attorneys' offices are bringing gun trafficking cases under the new provisions of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Those provisions have given us new authority to go after gun traffickers and straw purchasers responsible for flooding our communities with guns. Our prosecutors have now charged nearly 300 defendants under that act and seized hundreds of firearms in connection with these cases. I have mentioned several examples of how the Justice Department is working to implement our partnership-based violent crime strategies. In implementing that strategy, we have generated a wealth of resources shaped heavily by the feedback we have received from all of you. But information is only as helpful as it is accessible. That is why today we are releasing a new publication through the Office of Justice Programs, our Violent Crime Reduction Roadmap. We have spent 2.5 years using every available resource to combat the violent crime spike. And this is a guide to the programs and strategies that we have seen work. We have seen them work in the District of New Jersey. There, federal, state, and local law enforcement have worked together to target their resources on the individuals and organizations that were primarily driving violent crime in 5 target cities with the worst violent crime. These efforts have paid off, as the number of shootings have decreased significantly in New Jersey statewide. And we have seen them work in the Eastern District of Michigan, where the U.S. Attorney's Office has partnered with both law enforcement and the community to drive down violent crime in Detroit. The One Detroit Partnership, they have aggressively prosecuted the primary drivers of violence, working with community groups to prevent violence from occurring and collaborating with corrections experts to support those who are returning to the community to ensure that they do not return to violence. This kind of partnership works. Recent data from the Detroit Police Department indicates this year is on track for the fewest homicides in Detroit in over 60 years. It is our hope that the Violent Crime Reduction Roadmap provides a starting point for communities across the country to learn about resources available to help them replicate these efforts. As I said at the start of my remarks, all of our communities are facing urgent and unprecedented challenges today. But I am encouraged by the data we have begun seeing indicating a recent decline in homicides. The FBI has reported the number of homicides fell over 6% nationally between 2021 and 2022. And earlier this year, the Major City Chiefs Association reported an over 10% decrease in the number of murders across 69 major cities through September of this year compared to the same period last year. These developments are encouraging, but this is not a time to relax our efforts. We have so much more to do. I am even more encouraged by your presence here. We know that the only way to replicate what is working and to bring violent crime down in every community is learning from each other and by investing in our partnerships. I know that is what you're going to be doing over the next few days. Our work together is our best hope to fulfill the promise that brought all of us here, that we will protect each other. Thank you for your commitment to that work.
Thank you so much to Attorney General Garland for joining us here today. And I am now so pleased to welcome one of the nation's top criminal justice leaders and the Justice Department's third-ranking official, Associate Attorney General Vanita Gupta. Associate Attorney General Gupta has been a leader and a champion across the federal government on efforts to build police community trust, increase support for victims of gun violence, expand community violence intervention efforts, prevent hate crimes, and so much more. Her commitment to public safety, to the law enforcement profession, and to equity and fairness in all of our communities is second to none. Please join me in welcoming Associate Attorney General Vanita Gupta.
Thank you, Amy. Good morning, everyone. It is great to be here with you in this full room and with the Attorney General, whose support for communities and law enforcement is the backbone of literally everything we do at the Justice Department. And it's wonderful to have so many U.S. attorneys in the room. You and your offices are working every day to build partnerships and keep your communities safe. And Mayor-in-Chief, thank you for welcoming us to Indianapolis. Amy, I want to thank your team at the Office of Justice Programs, and in particular, Director Carlton Moore and the Bureau of Justice Assistance for putting together this convening, and for your efforts to equip our law enforcement and community partners with resources to disrupt violence and end cycles of trauma. I want to also commend our partners here in Indianapolis and across the country for the critical work that you are doing to reduce violence and advance safety. Whether you are in law enforcement to protect and serve, a prosecutor working to keep your community safe, a community leader and service provider for reaching those in need, or a local leader pledged to safeguard the welfare of your constituents. Your jobs are difficult. They can be dangerous, and make no mistake, they are utterly indispensable. As a nation, I fear that we have become much too accustomed to gun violence and the senseless destruction of lives. Mass violence is an all too common event, and just as unsettling are countless shootings that occur in our streets every day in America. As Associate Attorney General, I have met with families whose children were killed in the horrific mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, with mothers who lost their kids to gun violence in Chicago, with survivors and family members from the Buffalo, New York Tops supermarket massacre. I remember the photos that they shared with me of loved ones whose lives were cut short, and I carry their stories with me, their grief, their anger, their frustration. Guns claimed the lives of more than 48,000 people in 2022, including almost 20,000 homicides. Firearms have been the leading cause of death among children in this country since 2020. For far too many kids, the promise of a bright future, which should be every child's birthright, is snatched away by a gun. To the rising toll of gun crimes and mass tragedies, we add the mounting tally of hate in this country. Hate crimes rose 12% between 2020 and 2021, and 2022 saw the highest reported levels yet. And we know global events right now have increased threats, anti-Semitic, anti-Muslim, anti-Arab threats. This is intolerable, and it violates everything we stand for as a country. It must be said that violent crime, as reported by law enforcement departments across the nation, is down. Despite upticks during the pandemic, the long downward trend that began in the early 90s is resuming. But we also know that the rate of non-fatal violent victimizations many of which are never reported to the police, rose last year, though again, the rate is far below its peak 3 decades ago. We must also acknowledge that the problem of violent crime is most pronounced in communities that have been marginalized and historically underserved. Neighborhoods that have long absorbed the costs associated with disinvestment are the ones most likely to face the regular threat of violence. None of this is news to you in this room. You see these problems firsthand, and the sad reality is too many of you have personal experience with violence, hate crimes, domestic violence, the epidemic of gun violence, which is especially acute in communities of color. And many of you have been affected directly, either through exposure as first responders, as elected officials meeting with victims day in and day out, or as someone who has personally experienced violence. The price of violent crime in America, economic, social, and emotional, is simply beyond measure. But here, with our shared mission, is hope. The programs you are here representing, from the National Public Safety Partnership to Project Safe Neighborhoods, to the work in rural communities and through our crime gun intelligence centers, these efforts are built on a sturdy foundation of partnership between law enforcement and the community, between federal and local partners, and between public safety professionals, community leaders, service providers, and people with lived experience. I believe that this focus on partnership and collaboration is key to meeting this moment. For too long, we have looked to law enforcement alone to solve the problem of violent crime. Police officers do all they can with the tools they have, often under extremely difficult circumstances, and they take heroic measures on behalf of the people and communities they serve. But law enforcement is also in the midst of a historic recruitment and retention crisis. And we at the Justice Department are committing to finding creative solutions to this difficult problem, including through our COPS hiring program, which just awarded $217 million to 394 agencies across the country to hire over 1,700 new officers this year. But even without this crisis, we know that violence is a complex challenge that cannot be fully resolved through one set of tools. Addressing violent crime requires every member of the community. It requires a deep investment in social capital and a strong commitment from all sectors. That's why we at the Justice Department are committed to approaches that complement enforcement and elevate the role of the community. 2 of the 4 core principles of the department's comprehensive strategy for reducing violent crime are about building trust and empowering communities. The first is that violent crime strategies must be based on a foundation of trust between law enforcement and communities. And the second is that we can prevent violence through investments in community-based violence prevention and intervention programs. These principles are important because public safety requires law enforcement legitimacy, community leadership, and a belief that equal justice is possible. But these aren't just lofty ideals. We are putting our money where our mouth is and working with you in your communities, putting these strategies into practice. We've awarded nearly $200 million for community violence intervention and prevention programs across the country. Community violence intervention and prevention doesn't describe one particular kind of program, but rather a comprehensive approach that is helping to change the way that we talk about and address gun violence and other serious violence. In some programs, credible messengers with deep ties to their communities are trained to work with those most at risk of engaging in violence. Other programs focus on workforce development, social services, or trauma-informed care. There are programs like Urban Peace Institute in Los Angeles, where they are training and deploying peacemakers to work alongside law enforcement officers in underserved areas in the city. There's the work in Lake County, Illinois, led by the state's attorney's office, that leans on violence interrupters to disrupt the cycle of violence and retaliation among youth. And there's the Osborne Association in the Bronx, which provides conflict resolution, cognitive behavioral therapy, transitional employment, and other services to young people at risk for gun crime involvement. We know that a cycle of violence, whether it's one large-scale event or gun crime in our streets, places enormous demands on local resources. It shakes the community. It can bring businesses to a standstill. It leads to confusion and frustration and fatigue for leaders as well as community members. We cannot yet anticipate and prevent every crisis, but in the meantime, we can increase our capacity for resilience and put our communities in our best position to respond and recover. And the Justice Department is working across all fronts to bring new resources to tackle these monumental challenges. Federal agents from ATF, the U.S. Marshals, DEA, the FBI are working alongside local, state, and tribal partners. We're providing peer-to-peer assistance to law enforcement leaders through our Mass Violence Advisory Initiative, supported by BJA. We support victims of mass violence through the FBI's Victim Services Division and our Office for Victims of Crime, and are continuously learning how to more effectively respond to victims and survivors. We're making crucial investments in violence reduction programs, including through the Rural Violent Crime Reduction and National Crime Gun Intelligence Center initiatives. We're providing research, training, technical assistance through PSP and through BJA's National Training and Technical Assistance Center to broaden and build our base of expertise. We're supporting law enforcement agencies with targeted technical assistance, critical incident reviews, and organizational assessments through our revitalized Collaborative Reform Initiative, or CRITAC, managed by our COPS office. It's in partnership with the International Association of Chiefs of Police and 8 other leading law enforcement organizations. To date, we've invested over $12.7 million in CRITAC and served more than 800 jurisdictions through over 1,000 technical assistant engagements. And we're brokering alliances across disciplines and across levels of government to give us our best chance at reducing violence in our communities. We are proud of this work, and we are even more proud to be doing it with all of you. Your commitment to curbing violence and your willingness to do what it takes to achieve that goal are inspiring. Every day I think about parents who have lost children, kids who have lost parents, and the first responders and communities that are grappling with the after effects of violence. Some days I fear that people are becoming numb to it all. But based on what I see here in Indianapolis, I am hopeful that as we work together on the underlying problems that lead to these tragedies, we can learn from one another and lean on one another and ultimately work toward the goal of safer, stronger, and thriving communities. Thank you all for what you do every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Gupta. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the Director of the Bureau of Justice Assistance, Carlton Moore. Director Moore was appointed by President Biden in February 2022. Prior to joining BJA, Director Moore served as the Executive Director of Ohio's Office of Criminal Justice Services, where he oversaw state and federal grants for law enforcement, victims assistance, juvenile justice, crime prevention, courts, anti-trafficking efforts, reentry, corrections programs, and traffic safety. He did it all. And he's continuing that mission at BJA to make a difference in criminal justice across the nation. He is committed to making sure that our department is available to meet the needs of you all. He is dedicated to building trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve, and into ensuring the well-being of those officers and the difficult tasks they handle on a daily basis. So, as you can see, Director Moore is all about partnerships, and this summit represents the collaborative approach that he takes to everything. It's not often, we started planning the summit a couple of months ago, and it's not often that the vision that your director has for an event comes to fruition. But this summit can be directly attributed to Director Moore's vision. So I'd ask you to turn your attention to the screens, and then the next voice you'll hear will be that of Director Moore's.
right. Good morning, everyone. It is so good to be here. It is so good that you all showed up. Yeah, that's one of the biggest concerns. You throw a party and no one shows up. So I appreciate everyone being here. Let me start. I have to start by thanking the Attorney General, the Associate Attorney General, and the Assistant Attorney General. It is so wonderful to work in a department full of people who support our work, and we have such support from our leadership in the department. You know, I wish everyone could be here, because when I was sitting down there, I could see people, and now it is so bright, I can't see any of you. So the room looks pretty full. It could be CGI, I don't know, but it looks incredibly full. So I'm so thankful that all of you are here. So I'm so honored to stand before you today as we kick off the Violent Crime Reduction Summit right here in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I thank the mayor and the chief so much for being such gracious hosts and having us here. We are joined by attendees from across the country, representing local, state, and federal law enforcement, prosecutors, and community organizations, as well as leaders from several criminal justice professional associations. And I want to give a special welcome to the new Public Safety Partnership cohort of cities, Knoxville, Minneapolis, Raleigh, San Antonio, and Vallejo. Congratulations on your selection as our new 2024 sites. And I've had an opportunity to meet with a couple of the chiefs. I'm looking forward to meeting with the others. But I know they are excited, and I'm so excited that you're going to join us in this journey together. I also want to take a moment to recognize the folks at BJA. You know, I think all of us have had some experience in putting some large convening or a conference or something together. And you know how much work it takes. And this has been a real team effort. There are too many people for me to thank by name. But I do want to thank two people in particular. Christy Brackens, who you've heard this morning. Thank you so much, Christy, for all of your work. And Kate McNamee. They have done a tremendous, tremendous job. And our partners at IIR, CNA, and Saxman One, who have also done so much work to help make this conference a success. And we would not be here without them. You know, last year, many of us gathered together in Tulsa, Oklahoma, for our Public Safety Partnership Summit. For those of you who weren't there, you missed an amazing conference. But for those of you who were there, I think you can attest to the fact that it was a pretty special event. And I remember talking to so many chiefs and former chiefs who came to me and said, "Where was this when I was a police chief? This has been incredible." But there was one person who came to me after the convening was over, and I don't even remember who it was, but he said to me, "This has been great. This has been outstanding. But what about the other cities? What about the other communities who aren't PSP sites? How do they get access to this information and to this knowledge?" You know, when I worked in Ohio, and I worked in Ohio for a long time, it was a great job and I enjoyed it a great deal. But one thing that became incredibly clear to me, and it's become even more clear since I've joined the Bureau of Justice Assistance, there are communities all across our country who are so plugged in, who are so knowledgeable, who have access to the best experts, the best techniques, the best resources possible. But there are other communities who are doing the best they can with what they have. And that's just not fair, and it's just not right. In Ohio, we created something called the Ohio Consortium of Crime Science with the purpose of spreading the best practices to communities all across the state of Ohio. And today, through our work and through this conference, it is a first step in our continuing effort to spread the best practices, the best knowledge, the best information to every practitioner across this country. Because don't they deserve it? Don't they deserve to have the best? And what about the people they are providing safety and security to? Don't they deserve to have the best practices put in place to keep them safe? And that's what our gathering is all about. So this year, we designed a Violent Crime Reduction Summit to include both our PSP sites and Project Safe Neighborhoods. As many of you know, PSN operates through the 94 U.S. Attorney's offices nationwide, and PSP has reached more than 50 sites across the country. In addition to PSN and PSP, we have partners from additional BJA grant programs, like the National Crime Gun Intelligence Center Initiative and the Rural Violent Crime Reduction Initiative that work together to reduce gun violence. But we've also invited key community leaders, community-based organizations, national organizations, state leaders, and local practitioners. Basically, anyone who can play a role in a comprehensive violent crime reduction strategy, because I think we all know that's what it's going to take. At BJA, we are charged with building safer communities, and we do this in 3 ways. Number one, we make investments. Just in the last 2 years alone, we have invested nearly $5 billion in communities all across the nation. We spread knowledge about what works, and we engage with practitioners in the field like you. And this gives us the opportunity to learn from your experience, to understand what you need, and understand how we can do our work better. This is really one of the best parts of my job, is that I get to visit communities and see their work and our investments all across the country. I visited with CVI workers and community leaders, police officers and prosecutors, investigators and forensic specialists, mayors and commissioners, academics and analysts. I've been to our largest urban centers and small rural communities in every region of this country. And everywhere I've gone, I've seen people committed to making their communities safer. This work matters, and it's having an impact. Through PSP, we've seen improvements in clearance rates, a crucial step in building and maintaining community trust. And it speaks to the legitimacy of the organizations that we serve. PSP sites are enhancing their investigatory and prosecution processes, contributing to increases in clearance rates. During the next few days, we will also highlight the tools, resources, and support from across the department that are available to you. We are committed to supporting your work, and I encourage you to connect with folks from the department. During our time together, we will examine efforts to enhance public safety and successful violence reduction strategies. We'll learn from the best practices, featuring 42 workshops and 6 plenary sessions with renowned criminal justice practitioners and subject matter experts. This summit marks a significant moment for all of us. We may have different backgrounds and live in different states, but at the end of the day, we are united by our deep commitment to the safety of our communities. You know, when I think about our collective responsibility to public safety, I'm reminded of a woman I met while in Brooklyn, New York. She was an elderly lady who sat in a wheelchair. And before someone could even finish introducing me to her, she interrupted and she told me, "Don't come to my community and not do anything to make it safer." I share that story because I think it serves as an example of why we are all here for the Violent Crime Reduction Summit and why our work together is so important. As we embark on this journey over the next 2.5 days, Let's keep in mind our shared mission and plan to leave better prepared to tackle the challenges at home, with a deeper understanding of the array of resources and tools available. We hope you leave with new connections and re-energized for the task ahead. Last year, at the launch of the National Law Enforcement Knowledge Lab, civil rights leader Connie Rice said the following words: "The first of all civil rights is safety, and the first of all freedoms is the freedom from violence." That is the purpose of this summit, to assist in our efforts to protect that civil right and to secure that sacred freedom. Thank you.